Human remains uncovered in a remote Siberian forest have sparked an intensive Kremlin investigation. Could they be the remains of the two Romanov children missing from the royal grave uncovered in 1991? The Romanovs were the wealthiest royal family on earth and the best connected. Their most powerful links were with the British royal family. The Tsarina Alexandra was a descendant of Queen Victoria and part of a royal network spanning the continent.
Essentially, the grandchildren of Queen Victoria in this particular era were occupying 9 thrones in Europe. We're essentially talking about the same extended family, if you like.
The Russian and British royals spent their holidays together. Nicholas II and George V had known each other since boyhood.
George and Nicholas were extremely close, not just in fact in terms of their appearance, which was uncannily similar. They were first cousins, writing to each other almost on a weekly basis.
Theirs was a sunlit world of luxury and privilege, but it wasn't to last. In 1914, Nicholas and George went to war together against their cousin Kaiser Wilhelm. 3 years later, the starving Russian population rose in a revolution that became a civil war. When Nicholas was forced to abdicate and exiled to Siberia, George was the only person who could save him. By letter, Nicholas begged his loving cousin for safe haven in England, and the king consented.
The British government was very keen and willing to offer asylum to Nicholas and his family. The view certainly seems to have been at the Foreign Office that he would be found a nice grace and favour country house or estate.
Then George began to worry. The Tsar had inspired hatred in his people. His presence in this country might start a British revolution.
Within a week and a half, George has had profound changes of view. He's now demanding that the cabinet withdraw that offer of asylum, effectively signing the death warrant of his cousin and his family.
The Bolsheviks gained power in October 1917. Lenin wanted a trial and then execution for the Tsar, but he needed the family alive.
He did not want the deaths of Alexandra or the children. In fact, he was quite adamant about that. He thought that it would turn world opinion against the fledgling Soviet Union.
But Lenin didn't control the whole country. The royals were 1,400 miles away in Siberia's Ural Mountains, held by men that even Moscow regarded as extremists. The Ural Soviet wanted the whole family dead. They correctly believed that White Russian troops loyal to the Tsar were on the way to rescue them. Time was running out. Lenin tried to save the Romanovs.
Lenin's government had the family on a train heading back to Moscow, but the Ural Soviet stopped the thing in its tracks, forcibly removing Nicholas and the family and taking them to a more secure location.
This house in Yekaterinburg would be the royals' last home. Commissar Yakov Yurovsky took command of the House of Exile. Guards who'd become attached to the family were removed. Yurovsky brought in new men with a new mission: to execute the prisoners. The Romanovs awaited their fate in the city of Yekaterinburg. It's here that DNA specialist Mike Coble and forensic expert Anthony Falsetti now arrive to make their initial assessment of the remains that might finally close the book on the story. When Falsetti came here for the 1991 investigation of the first set of Romanov bones, he was caught up in the start of a high-profile scientific dispute.
Throughout the 90s, there were many investigations. They were all done in the world spotlight.
There was no doubt that the skeleton of Prince Alexei was not in the grave. But the Russians used an unconventional method of facial reconstruction to determine that Anastasia's skeleton was present and Maria was missing. The Americans and British used state-of-the-art technology and found the opposite. Anastasia was missing. Falsetti and Coble have to find Alexei and an unspecified sister to solve the mystery. The investigators are anxious to avoid media attention, but their examination of the bones quickly becomes an impromptu press conference.
We arrive into the lab, and there's a massive number of cameras and people doing interviews while we're trying to look at the remains.
It's a media circus. I don't think these people have any understanding of contamination, the potential for breakage of these samples, and just losing them under all of this chaos.
Are the conditions good enough for you?
These are the Romanovs that were used to being photographed, but I'm not sure why they're willing to compromise the forensic science by that. That's worrisome.
A single rogue fingerprint or drop of sweat on any of the bones could affect DNA analysis.
Once the cameras are gone, we get down to work. And what I discover is that these 44 fragments, many we're not going to be able to identify. There's just not enough material here.
Falsetti is a forensic anthropologist, routinely examining skeletal remains to try to read their story. He's searching these fragments for signs of a boy of 11 and a girl in her mid to late teens. It's half a day before he can shed some light.
At this point, we've got at least 2 individuals. One of them is larger and probably older than the other, and that's really where we are at this point.
By late afternoon, painstaking examination leads to a small breakthrough.
It doesn't look like much. It is a portion of the pelvis. It is our os cox, and as it turns out, it is from a female. We can deduce that by the sciatic notch. In males, it would be more narrow. In females, it is quite wide. That is critical. We know we have 2 people. Now we know that one of them is female.
Not only a female, but a teenager. But could she be the missing princess? And do they have the crown prince?
Right now, I can't tell whether I have 2 females or a male and a female, or whether these fragments are part of the other bones that were already recovered.
Peter Serandinaki is the descendant of loyalist Russians and has funded the search for the lost children for decades. For him, just the possibility that these are the royal remains makes this examination a breakthrough.
Closure is always very important in a country's history. Personally, for me, is that the real goal is to have the church accept them. Yes, these are the bones.
Throughout the examination, the handling of what may be holy relics is a delicate matter.
The Romanovs are regarded as semi-divine, which was a status not accorded to any other royal family in Europe.
The Tsar was the head of the Russian church. In the 1980s, the family were declared holy martyrs and made saints. If these new bones are the missing children, the Orthodox Church, who have never given up hope of their discovery, will be able to bury the family together. Millions may be waiting, but after examining the bones, Falsetti still has no news.
Saying in the affirmative that these are the Romanovs based on 44 fragments can't be done at this moment. It's going to take additional forensic sciences.
The investigation now passes to DNA expert Mike Coble, who's lost some of his early confidence. The bones have been burned.
Looking at the remains, I'm beginning to think this is going to be a very difficult case. When the bone is burned, there's a lot of heat generated, which is not very good for DNA.
Take our sample from down here, 2.5, 3 centimeter cut.
Coble must determine which slivers of bone, if any, might yield DNA. Minute pieces will be cut off and sent to Coble's lab in America and others around the world for independent analysis.
Fragments that we think would have the highest degree of success.
This will be a very long and complex process, and the chance that readable DNA has survived is slim. Kobel now heads back to America to await the arrival of his bone samples. Investigator Falsetti is bound for Moscow. Answers to the mystery of the fate of the Romanov children may lie somewhere other than the bones. He's determined to discover how a simple execution became a complex mystery. This much is known. Just after midnight on July the 17th, 1918, the family was woken. They were told that anarchist unrest in the town made the upper floors unsafe. There might be shooting in the streets. The Tsar, Tsarina, and their 5 children, along with 4 servants, were taken to the basement for safety. Commissar Yurovsky entered the room, having instructed each of his 11 gunmen to shoot a different family member in the heart to lessen the blood flow. There are some 20 different accounts of what happened next. Yurovsky himself wrote 4. There are hints that some royals might have survived. As the smoke cleared, the misinformation and cover-ups that created the mystery began. Local, national, and international newspapers reported that the Tsar was dead, but the family were alive and well. The public couldn't believe anything had happened to the Romanovs. They were reportedly seen in public in cities across Russia. Lenin grew uneasy. Was the Yekaterinburg Soviet lying to him? Agents went east to interrogate an Alexei imposter. Years passed. Under Stalin, it was forbidden to even mention the family. But the rumors of surviving Romanov heirs could not be extinguished. Every rumor, secret and lie, was recorded and investigated by the KGB, as were the reports of the executioners, the only witnesses to the killing. They were all secreted in the state archive. As an investigator working for the Kremlin, Falsetti has been given top-level clearance.
Here I am, an American scientist, 2 floors below ground, 100 years worth of communist secrets.
The keeper of those secrets is Dr. Ludmila Lykova. Giant blast doors were designed to protect the Kremlin's precious records from nuclear attack.
We're down here, it's 30 feet, walls are 2 feet thick, and this is Lenin's archive.
The Bolshevik Supremo was a master of intrigue.
So these are Lenin's documents, his originals?
Телеграмма из
Telegram.
Копенгагена Ленину.
This one's from Copenhagen, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Rumor here going that the Tsar has been murdered. Kindly wire fax. What's this?
Ответ Ленина по-английски.
Lenin was bombarded with questions from an anxious outside world.
Rumor not true. Tsar safe. All rumors are only lie of capitalist press. And it's signed Lenin. So this is what we've been looking for. This is the point where the mystery and the confusion really began.
By daybreak on the 17th of July, the deed was done. The statements of the firing squad are kept 4 floors below. Dr. Lykova shows Falsetti a top-secret report filed by Yakov Yurovsky, intended for the eyes of Lenin alone. Written in 1920, could this account be the truth? For better or worse, he was a man who did things by the book.
Yurovsky said this about the execution of the emperor's family. They stood along the wall, and Yurovsky said the following words to them. The reign of the Tsar has reached its end. Despite the fact that relatives both outside and inside the country are trying to liberate them, The Ural Soviet of the Workers' Deputies has decreed they must be shot.
When the executioners opened fire, there were a number of problems. Amongst them, they were in a basement room with stone walls, which sent the bullets sort of ricocheting around the room.
The firing, Yurovsky says, became ever so confused, and when this confused fire ended, the shooters saw the daughters were still alive. They shot the girls, but nothing happened. They weren't able to kill them.
Incredibly, most accounts agree that the children were protected by family jewels sewn into corsets to hide them from the Bolsheviks. In the 1960s, surviving killers recorded their half-remembered testimony.
It appeared they'd sewn diamonds into their bras, a variety of necklaces, pearls, etc., etc. Bullets were bouncing off. There was somebody, well, so to say, as if they had not finally killed this woman, Anastasia.
Was the execution botched? Could 11 men have failed to kill everyone? Falsetti leaves the archive with a copy of the secret Yurovsky report, determined to answer a central question, never tested before.
Could jewels stop a bullet?
Soviet archives contain the testimony of the men who shot the Romanovs. They suggest some were protected from bullets by jewel-filled corsets. The possibility of actual science behind the legend of the survival of one or more royal children is irresistible to forensic investigator Anthony Falsetti. In March 2008, he's back in Moscow.
I left the archive and made a decision. This is a theory that needs to be put to the test. I don't believe it ever has.
The Kremlin has supplied a firing range, but they've stopped short of using actual diamonds, the hardest of all gems, for this remarkable experiment. Zirconias score 8 out of 10 on the gem hardness scale. Rose quartz and carnelian are still incredibly hard at 0.7. Bullets will smash into them at 1,000 feet a second. Will they be deflected? Colonel Vladimir Soloviev of the Interior Ministry is the leader of the Romanov investigation. He has access to the actual guns used by Yurovsky and the firing squad.
The curators from the museum have given me on loan the actual pistols used to kill the Tsar's family, to study them and conduct this experiment, and for this investigation. Tsar Nicholas II was killed with this pistol. This pistol was also in the basement of the Impatiev house and may have been used to kill other members of the Tsar's family. This pistol was also used in all the events in the Impatiev house.
It's a grotesque feeling to be in the presence, to hold the weapons that killed this family.
These guns were disabled decades ago, but the Kremlin arsenal has sent other working examples.
We're a bit scared to conduct this experiment, but we'll do it anyway.
Safety is a major concern. All but the ballistics technician must take cover.
We are going to put this legend to the test. I have no idea what's going to happen. We had different powered weapons. They were fired sequentially, and what we have on the first two is clearly some fragmentation. These projectiles did not pass through on these first two. There's an impact site here from the second. but none of these were what we would consider penetrating gunshot wounds. When I look at these fragments of bullets and I see the evidence here, the logical conclusion is that they could possibly have survived. We've demonstrated that here today. It's very surprising.
If Alexei and one of his sisters survived the shooting in the basement, they might have been helped to escape. That was the story told by all of those claiming to be the lost royals. The most famous was Anna Anderson. She went to her grave claiming to be Grand Duchess Anastasia. And she managed to convince many who actually knew the little princess. Peter Serendinaki's family was amongst them.
My mother-in-law, to her dying days, to her last day, believed that Anna Anderson was Anastasia. She knew so many things, so many deep secrets that nobody else would know unless they were inside the family. She also had the same stub toe problem as Anastasia. She had the same ear as Anastasia. There were a lot of similarities between the two.
My own views on Anna Anderson fluctuated wildly over the years. I was at first convinced that she was Anastasia, then I was convinced that she wasn't.
No one knows how she could recall in an instant intimate moments from Romanov family life, or explain the distinctive physical characteristics she shared with the princess. To many, she was Anastasia. But after her death, DNA established she was in fact a former factory worker from Poland. It's DNA evidence that this investigation will hinge on. In April, a box containing samples from the bones found in Syria finally arrives with Mike Coble in Washington. They'll be subjected to the most sophisticated analysis available. Samples are also on their way to other labs around the world. The Kremlin wants no arguments this time. Any contamination of the samples at this stage would compromise the results. The bone shavings prepared in Yekaterinburg are all that can be released. To test the bone shards, Coble must grind them to fine powder. The shortage of material available to this investigation is a problem not faced by the 1991 team. The first grave contained full skeletons, providing a wealth of samples. This time, there's precious little to work with, and if the first tests are inconclusive, there may not be enough left to carry on. On the other side of the world, Anthony Falsetti has left Moscow and returned to Siberia, convinced by his firing range experiment that it's at least possible that 2 of the Tsar's children escaped death.
I'm not saying there wouldn't have been injury, but I'm saying it's possible. I am convinced that Anastasia and Alexei could have survived.
He's come in response to news so surprising it had him on the first flight to Yekaterinburg. Sergei Pogrilov, one of the amateur archaeologists in the forest, came home with more than bones. He has artifacts that suggest the first direct link between the 2 graves. Amongst them, quantities of ash and some pottery. The ash corroborates the burns on the bones. A picture of what happened is emerging. The pottery shards are astonishing, identical to pieces in the 1991 grave.
These are the ones from 1991? Okay.
Those pieces came from jars that had contained acid used by the killers to destroy the corpses of the Tsar and his family.
Very similar.
The next artifacts might be the strongest link of all. 3 bullets. Are they from the same guns used to kill the royals found in the first grave? The bullets are analyzed in a high-security military lab. When a round leaves a gun, the barrel etches unique grooves into the metal. One of the new bullets is unreadable, but the other two are in good condition.
We can determine that the bullets were shot from the same weapon, a Browning pistol.
It is a First World War era weapon, but there's a twist.
These bullets are different in caliber from the ones found in 1991.
These rounds were fired from a gun of the same type and same age, but not one that has been identified before. This is not surprising. Yurovsky had 11 members of the royal household to kill, and he said he'd assigned a gunman to each. Could these two bullets have been fired by a killer ordered to shoot one of the two youngest members of the family? In mid-April, Falsetti begins the long journey back to his lab in Florida. He's shown for the first time ever that the legend could be true, that two of the royal children might have survived a hail of bullets. But at the last minute, he uncovered ballistic evidence suggesting otherwise. The DNA evidence is going to be decisive. But in Washington, Michael Coble is in difficulty. He's got insufficient DNA samples for testing, so he has to attempt a remarkable process called polymerase chain reaction to make more.
We take a fragment of DNA and we artificially, in the tube, make multiple copies, billions of copies, seeing the limited amount of material present and the fact that the DNA is quite challenged. Even though this is a test that would be unheard of 5 or 10 years ago, with PCR, it could be possible.
But even after increasing his sample, there are no guarantees that the DNA he produces will be readable. There's every chance there'll be no usable genetic material with which to close the Romanov file, and the identity of the individuals from the frozen forest grave will remain a mystery forever. Falsetti is back in his lab. He works on murder cases from across America and is familiar with the behavior of killers trying to dispose of bodies. He has his copy of the top secret account Yurovsky wrote for Lenin. Can he show that amongst the many accounts left by the killers, this one is the most credible? This testimony tells how two bodies were butchered, burned with acid, and then incinerated. Does the damage on the bones correlate with this story? Yurovsky was a man under pressure. He feared that White Russian forces loyal to the Tsar might catch him red-handed. He had to get rid of the evidence, fast. According to his account, around 2 a.m., he and his men transported the bodies out of town to a forest area dotted with abandoned mines.
So here's what we know. The bodies were taken into the forest. They were thrown down a mine shaft. Grenades were thrown after them in an attempt to collapse the walls.
But the bodies were only partially hidden. With dawn approaching, Yurovsky returned to the city to report to his superiors. Disaster struck. The squad got drunk and bragged to locals, telling how they'd killed the royals and where the bodies were. Yurovsky had demanded secrecy. The corpses had to be moved again.
The next day, the bodies were retrieved, and Yurovsky has his men looking for a new location.
Overnight, rain had fallen. The ground was like glue. The truck got stuck. The bodies were offloaded. Yurovsky was exhausted and his men were mutinous. Around 2:30 a.m., he decided to try burning the bodies. To speed up the burning process, the men were ordered to first dismember the corpses.
So this is where the science and history start to meet up. One of the bones we have has a cut mark in it. It's a slash right through the shaft.
According to Yurovsky's account, another indignity awaited the remains. He tells how acid was poured over the bodies to help destroy them. But the effects are not visible to Falsetti. A Moscow lab has run tests, revealing traces of sulfuric acid in the remains. Again, the science backs Yurovsky's account. According to Yurovsky, the fire was lit around 3 a.m. He tells how he selected the two smallest bodies first. Falsetti believes he knows why Yurovsky was only able to partially burn two bodies, and why the others were disposed of in a second grave. Yurovsky needed to finish before dawn, when he might be revealed to White Russians loyal to the Tsar.
We know that they had between an hour and a half and 3 hours to completely consume two human bodies.
Pig flesh is similar to human tissue and is frequently used in the lab. After 3 hours of burning on an open fire, flesh is charred, but even smashed up bones would still be largely intact.
What we've demonstrated here is it's not possible to consume a body in a fire. Certainly not one for 3 hours, relatively low temperatures.
It appears Yurovsky's incineration plan was a fiasco. In 3 hours, he couldn't even destroy two bodies. He must have given up the plan, burying some of the burnt remains and scattering the rest. With dawn breaking and 9 bodies still in the truck, Yurovsky's men were forced to dig a second pit, 70 meters away, throwing in the Tsar and the rest of the family and servants. For the first time, using a secret account and forensic tests, Falsetti has shown what probably happened in the forest that night. But only DNA will be able to conclusively prove that the bones are those of the lost Romanov children. Will the remains, so badly damaged, reveal their secrets? The testing of the DNA of the bones from Siberia is now complete. The Pentagon's forensic laboratories have been assigned a complex task, determining if 44 badly damaged bone fragments are the last remains of Crown Prince Alexei and one of his sisters, ending a century of doubt.
There was a lot of degradation present. The bones had been burned. Acid had been placed on the bones. It wasn't giving me a lot of confidence.
The Russian government wants results that will end the search for the lost children. If there were survivors, there may be a royal heir at large. Had he escaped, it's unlikely Alexei would have produced a successor. He was a hemophiliac with a short life expectancy. But if Anastasia or Maria had survived and had offspring in hiding, there might be a figurehead for a monarchist movement out there, ready to fill the post-communist vacuum. 5 months since he first saw the bones, and after the most complex investigation of his career, Mike Coble is ready to share his findings.
The first thing that we should look at is here. This is the marker that determines sex. And sample 146, there's an XY.
One victim was definitely male.
Male sample. Right.
But what about the other?
7 has one X peak, and this is what we see with females.
DNA supports Falsetti's forensics. The second victim was female. Next, Coble takes the male sample and tries to match it to the Tsar and Tsarina's DNA taken from the 1991 grave.
So what we have here on top, this is a profile from the Tsar, and then this on the bottom is a profile from the Tsarina. And here is the male sample from the second grave. We expect that this particular profile is going to be a combination of the Tsar and the Tsarina, if this is truly Alexei. This male...
The male sample has half his DNA from the Tsar and half from the Tsarina.
And this 23 peak was passed to him from the Tsarina. And here is...
It's conclusive. The boy is their son, Alexei. After nearly a century of speculation, here is proof that the Crown Prince died with his parents, but was separated at the point of burial. Coble now tries to find how many genetic similarities are shared between Alexei and the female sample.
They both share this marker, which is a 33.2 repeat. 23 repeats and 25 repeats. It's over 1 million times more likely that these remains are siblings than if they were completely unrelated.
Okay.
Very strong evidence here that we have a brother and a sister.
This is what the whole investigation is about. 90 years after they were separated, the royal family is back together again. The missing sister is found. Case closed.
Of course, there is a limitation here. The DNA can't tell us exactly which child is Anastasia and which child is Maria.
The bottom line is it really doesn't matter anymore because they're all present and accounted for.
Yeah.
In the West, the escape of Anastasia in particular has been the subject of books, films, even cartoons. Now we know all that is just fantasy.
The fact of the matter is, Anastasia is there, along with her 3 other sisters and her brother, and the mystery solved.
The entire family died together in the Yekaterinburg basement, and more than 80 people who claimed to be surviving children were imposters. The Orthodox Church interred the bodies found in 1991 with great ceremony, but the family was incomplete. Now they can reunite them. For those Russians who want to forget the past, this is the chance of a new beginning.
The Bolshevik period began with the murder of the Romanov family. The finding of the 2 sets of remains now offers a tantalizing possibility for the Russian people to finally close that dark chapter in their history and put it behind them, essentially.
For some, facing the truth about the fate of these young children will be difficult.
I don't believe the truth is unpalatable. Some people will be disappointed, no, they didn't escape. I think the truth allows us to move on.
90 years after the Tsar and his family were led into the basement in Siberia, an international investigation has finally shown what happened to them and solved the riddle of the Romanovs.
Robert Taylor, Deborah Kerr and Peter Ustinov as a very wicked Emperor Nero in the epic Quo Vadis, next on 5.